Well, joining me now, Ken Cuccinelli. He is the founder of the Never Back Down PAC that is supporting Governor DeSantis. He's played a key role in Ted Cruz's 2016 campaign, so it's not his first rodeo against the Donald Trump juggernaut these days. Mr. Cuccinelli, happy Friday to you, sir.
Good to be with you.
Let me start. I'd like to get you to respond to the Wall Street Journal editorial page there. They have lamented the direction of the DeSantis messaging, the DeSantis campaign. Do you accept that critique that he's been mired too much in some of these culture war issues?
No, I don't. They have a place. They're not the whole race. But Ron DeSantis is the national leader in K through 12, protecting children against this agenda and the over-sexualization of children. He's the national leader in taking back public higher education in this space against the woke agenda, including getting men in particular out of women's locker rooms for sports. That's just one group of it. And he's leading the country from the state level against the ESG agenda, where you see the woke agenda show up in corporations. And so it's a pretty big contest. Now, in his comments today, he also noted he's knocked Florida's debt down by 25%, while Donald Trump added $8 trillion to the national debt. Got Florida, by the way, to the second lowest debt per capita while cutting taxes. So he isn't ignoring economic issues at all. But I don't accept at all that these aren't important. I'll tell you, Chuck, I've been out, not just in Iowa, but in a lot of states, stumping for the benefit of Governor DeSantis. And this is a firing up issue. And his reelection, he captured Democrat and independent mothers and suburban voters because of the great job he was doing protecting their children in schools and getting them back into school.
Well, you sort of are conflating, though. I mean, I think that's where I'm getting at. You know, I thought Rich Lowry put it very well earlier this week in Politico. He asked the question, what happened to the Florida DeSantis? And he notes here, and I'm going to just read a bit of an excerpt. DeSantis in Florida wasn't primarily a culture warrior, even if that was an important part of his agenda. His signature reelection ad, with Floridians from various walks of life thanking him for the job he did in his first term, warm and fuzzy, and only made a reference to one cultural issue very obliquely. The point being is he's really leaning in more on what, look, you did it just now. Look, he's leading on ESG. He's leading on this. This isn't what everyday voters are worried about. I take the primary voters in Iowa might be fired up about it, but is it sort of losing, are you the old forest through the trees here, right? Are you not seeing the bigger picture, or is the message not seeing the bigger picture? No,
I understand the concern. Chuck, I understand the concern. I don't think it's an illegitimate issue to discuss. But as you noted, he's in Iowa this week. He's talking to Iowans. They do care about it. It is not the only subject he's covering. It is a big part of media coverage. And I would point out that a lot of while DeSantis implemented many good economic policies, what made him stand out nationally in terms of Florida's performance was that he opened Florida back up when that was a very controversial thing to do. Donald Trump and the mainstream media and the so-called experts were all against him on that, and yet he did it. I mentioned the school's benefit to children, but that also allowed their small and medium-sized businesses in Florida to thrive, and it's why hundreds of thousands of people moved to Florida, was that freedom agenda that covered not just the cultural issues, but also economic issues. So I partially agree with you in the sense that you can't just talk about cultural issues. I don't agree with the Wall Street Journal that that is not important in some way. It is very important to mainstream conservative grassroots Republican voters.
Let me ask you this. What is the metric? You've got donors who love to be blind quote backseat drivers to your campaign, as you might know. What is the metric that they should watch? Yeah. What's the metric you would offer up right now to say, hey, the reset has worked? See, we are making progress. Because one of the things I'm wondering about is, what is an event coming up? Is it the debate? Where can the Governor DeSantis tell the doubters, hey, see, everything, we've righted the ship. We had a tough start, but we're in good shape. What's a metric that you would advise people to watch for to say, yeah, that's proof that it's working?
So obviously the debates are milestones in the campaign. And oftentimes they are make or break in both directions for various campaigns. And we can both, I'm sure, rattle off examples of both from previous races. I would note that that's going to be particularly interesting contrast without Donald Trump there. Donald Trump lost the first presidential debate to Joe Biden. He is a good showman, but he is not a good debater because it highlights his weaknesses. Whereas in Ron DeSantis's case, it showcases his preparation, his brain power, and his application of it all to the benefit of ordinary Americans' lives. So I look very forward to his performance in those debates as a place to expand his forward-looking vision for America. And a lot of what he did in Florida has national implications, and he keeps spelling those out. He talked about the military. He's the only veteran running this week. He started that Monday in South Carolina. He's continued to roll out policies that connect his vision, including the cultural positions he's taken, for instance, in the military and how debilitating it is for the military, to a national commander-in-chief position. And the more he does that, the more American voters are going to appreciate how it's going to affect their lives in their state outside of Florida. And I think that's going to make a lot of headway for him.
Are you at all concerned that you're, as a super PAC, you guys are almost too engaged in winning the day-to-day social media news cycle? There's been this critique. Oh, the DeSantis campaign's too online. They respond too much to what fires people up online. Like RFK Jr. is sort of a creature of the internet. He doesn't really, like, the rest of the world doesn't really feel it or see it, right? It's really just the most passionate activists know what's going on with him. And it does feel like a little bit too online. Do you at all accept that critique?
No, I don't. I will tell you, as the founder of this super PAC, we intended from day one to be different among super PACs. We've knocked over 1 million doors. We crossed the millionth door in South Carolina on behalf of the governor this week. There is no other campaign or super PAC that I'm even aware of is knocking doors at any scale. We're talking to voters one at a time so they can get to know Governor DeSantis's personal history, in a way you don't get from a mailer or in these, the TV back and forths that is much more personal. I'm a believer that hearts and minds are changed by people, not the news stations and not, media and so forth. So that's a great success for us that no one else is even challenging us on. So you can expect to see this super PAC continue to behave differently than super PACs ever have before.
If Trump's not in the first debate, this could be a big contrast between DeSantis and Tim Scott. Do you think that's a good thing for your candidacy, for his candidacy?
I think that I don't think it's relevant necessarily to specifically Tim Scott so much as that a lot of Republican voters or those who may vote in Republican nominations, independents, for instance, vote in New Hampshire, they'll tune in. And they'll start to get a feel for him that they haven't gotten yet. Chuck, you and I are not statistically normal in the amount of attention we pay to a race this far off this early. And yet there's a whole narrative around, oh, the polls say this, or as if we're at the closing gate, and we're really barely at the starting gate. And his perseverance and work ethic are going to play a big role in his good performance in the debate and his gradual building toward victory when we turn the corner on 2024.
Well, you better hope Yogi Berra isn't right in that it's getting late early. Anyway, Ken Cuccinelli from Never Back Down. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective with us. Good to talk with you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.